Welcome back to Book Break and welcome to our September book haul. As happens every month, I have been sent a surprise box of books packed full of some of the most exciting books we published in the month of September, and I'm going to unbox it with you now. So, lucky dip, the first book in here is Divine Might by Natalie Haynes. This is Natalie Haynes' latest non-fiction book. It's all about the goddesses in Greek mythology. And if you would like to know which goddess you are, I just made a video about that. I will link to that below. I went through each of the goddesses that Natalie Haynes explores in this book, and I recommended each of them a book, as well as giving you a few facts about them to help you identify which goddess you might be, and therefore which book you might want to read. So do click through and watch that video. I had a lot of fun making it, so I hope you enjoy it. And this is Divine Might. It is a thing of beauty. Natalie Haynes is such an expert and such a brilliant writer. She writes both fiction and non-fiction about Greek myths. And this is a kind of deep dive into the way that goddesses are portrayed in Greek myths and all of their different stories. So fascinating stuff. And look, beautiful end pages. If you're interested, I've decided that I am Hestia. Something else beautiful in here, Enchanted Tales and Happily Ever Afters. This is stunning. This is part of our Macmillan Collector's Library. Between the covers of this beautiful book are 10 magical and much loved fairy tales. The Little Mermaid, the Snow Queen, Rapunzel, Cinderella and more. And each story's got drawings. Let's have a look. Look, colour illustrations. That is absolutely stunning. This is going to be a great Christmas present. Like it or not, it is coming up to that time of year where you need to think about that. I can picture this being under a lot of Christmas trees. Oh, this is a weighty one. The Armour of Light by Ken Follett. This is a very, very highly anticipated book that is finally here. This is book number 5 in the Kingsbridge series. It is another sweeping, epic historical tale of revolution. This one's set in 1792. Well, at least it starts in 1792. It's going to go all the way through to the 1820s. Ken Follett fans, rejoice, it is finally here. And another chunky one, and another very highly anticipated one, Fall of Ruin and Wrath by Jennifer L. Armentrout. A very different group of readers have been eagerly anticipating this one. I'd be very interested to know if there is any overlap. Please do comment below if you have been waiting for both Fall of Ruin and Wrath and The Armour of Light, because I'd be fascinated to know. Both epic stories, so not as different as you might think. This one is high stakes fantasy, or rather romantasy. It's got a breathtaking romance in it. This is from beloved best-selling author Jennifer L. Armentrout. Now out in paperback, Exiles by Jane Harper. This is the final book featuring federal investigator Aaron Falk. These books also so beloved. Jane Harper is the queen of Aussie crime, Outback Noir as it is sometimes known. I actually have a whole video recommending Aussie crime books, which I will link to below. This one has got all of your favourite ingredients for Jane Harper novel. It's got long-held secrets buried deep within a community. It's got a mystery that you won't be able to solve, and Aaron Falk is just better than ever. Also now in paperback, the 2 final Cormac McCarthy novels. So this is a duology, The Passenger and Stella Maris. They come as a companion set, really. This book is from the perspective of Bobby Weston, and this is from the perspective of his sister Alicia Weston. They tell very different stories, but they are fascinating to read side by side. For something a little bit spooky, it is coming up to Halloween season after all. Leech by Hiron Ennis is now out in paperback, and it looks just as terrifying as it did in hardback. I have been too scared to read this one, but I've heard it's incredible. I think maybe I need to put my big girl pants on and actually read it. In an isolated chateau owned by a baron, a parasite is spreading. And this is something that should be impossible, because the humans living in this chateau, their bodies have already been possessed by the Institute. Mysterious Institute. What is the Institute? It is here to help humanity. For hundreds of years it has taken root in young minds and shaped them into doctors, replacing every human practitioner of medicine. But now there's competition. It sounds so spooky! To get your heart rate back down after reading that and being terrified, you could read 10 Times Karma by Dr. Kieran Schnack. This is all about how to beat anxiety and change your life. Yes, please. It's got practical exercises in it to show you how to actually apply the advice in here. I've just opened it on this random chapter called How Can I Address My Anxious Thoughts, and it's got a little chart. I should do that. How can I face my fears? A 4-step approach. Maybe I should use that to help with the fact that it is giant spider season in the UK at the moment, so I need to face my fears. And you know the advice in here is really sound. So Dr. Kiran Schnack is an Oxford-trained practicing clinical psychologist. She's got more than 20 years experience, and she also has a massive social media following. 500,000 people follow her on social media because they know that her advice really works. Continuing in the non-fiction, another book that is out now in paperback is A Brief History of Black Holes by Dr. Becky Smethurst. She is an award-winning astrophysicist, again with a big social media following, and she breaks down here very, very complicated science into a way we can all understand. So this book charts 500 years of scientific breakthroughs in astronomy and astrophysics, and it's all about black holes, which are objectively the most fascinating and terrifying part of science. This book is going to help us understand really profound questions and concepts, like how the future is actually a direction in space rather than in time. Can't get my head around that one. Why black holes aren't really black, and that you never ever want to be spaghettified. I don't think that I do. Now this looks gorgeous. I've been waiting to actually get my hands on this. Island of Whispers by Frances Hardinge, illustrated by Emily Gravett. This is the dream team. Frances Hardinge is such a good, imaginative, creative fantasy writer, and Emily Gravett illustrates books so beautifully, and this is their first collaboration. Look, already you can see this picture has brought to life quite how fascinating the inside of Frances Hardinge's brain is. It's about Milo, who is thrust into the role of ferryman. He is tasked with carrying the dead away. So it sounds a little bit spooky, really thrilling and imaginative, and just gorgeous to look at. A Letter to My Transgender Daughter by Carolyn Hayes is now out in paperback. This is a mother's story of raising her daughter who is transgender in a part of America that was very hostile to them as a family. So Carolyn and her family, when their daughter came out to them as transgender, they welcomed their new daughter, they changed names, they changed pronouns, they allowed her to dress how she wanted. They were in every way a supportive parent. And then a social worker came knocking at their door, investigating an anonymous complaint, and they realised that their daughter was maybe not safe living in the place that they had been calling home. So this book is Carolyn Hayes writing a letter to her daughter, this letter of love and empathy and a celebration of difference, but also talking about her fears and talking about her hopes for a better future. Berserker is the autobiography of Adrian Edmondson, who is a comedy legend from the 1980s. He was in absolutely iconic shows like The Young Ones and Bottom, and he is very, very funny. So this book goes through his life and his career, all of the incredible experiences that he's had, all the way from playing the angel Gabriel in 4 school productions and dreaming of becoming a rock god one way, all the way through to the incredible career that he really did have, including playing with The Who and kissing Joni Mitchell along the way. Fascinating. How did any of that happen? Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll is a book I have been raving about on and off camera. It's fantastic. So this is the latest book by Jessica Knoll, who is the author of Luckiest Girl Alive. You may have seen the film adaptation of that with Mila Kunis in it. Bright Young Women is an extraordinary book that I have thought about so much since I finished reading it. It is based on a true story. It tells the story of a serial killer, America's most notorious serial killer. I'm not going to say his name because Jessica Knoll is really careful not to say his name for the vast majority of his book. In fact, she never says his full name because this man has already got so much notoriety, so much fame, and weird, twisted kind of glory that he does not need any more of our attention. This book is about the bright young women who were his victims, and that phrase is chosen and twisted from something that was said in real life. Judge actually said about this man who had killed a huge amount of women, really terrifying, and he called him a bright young man. The story of this particular serial killer has been adapted before, and there's been a lot of controversy and a lot of conversation about the way that we portray people like this. He's been portrayed on screen and just in kind of storytelling as this incredibly clever, incredibly charming, incredibly good-looking person, and so he's got this kind of weird glory. And actually in this story, Jessica Knoll makes it clear that he was just some incel who managed to take advantage of a system that was against women, a system that was not designed to protect women and that did not take violence against women very seriously at all. We follow a few different characters in this book. One of the main ones is a sorority girl who survived an attack at her sorority house that is based on a real thing that happened. And in the aftermath of this attack, it is just extraordinary seeing how the other surviving women, young women, were treated, and even the way that the victims were spoken about. And a lot of this is based on truth. So Jessica Knoll has written such a thought-provoking book here that will really make you question the way we talk about true crime, our obsession with true crime. And if you have guessed who the serial killer is that it is based on, it will dismantle every myth you have ever heard of about him. Another book out in paperback now, A Restless Truth by Freya Marske. This is the second book in the Last Binding trilogy. The third book is coming out later this year, so make sure you've read this one to catch up. These are each sort of standalone romances, but all set in the same universe with the same overarching magical story. So in the first book, which was called A Marvelous Light, we were introduced to this magical world that is going on beneath the surface of our real world. And in book number 2, we get to go on a boat and watch two women fall in love. If I Let You Go by Charlotte Levin, also out in paperback. This is a twisty-turny story about a woman called Janet Brown who has a secret. Something happened to her 11 years ago that she cannot erase, and she's been carrying the guilt from this all this time. And now in the present day, she finds herself involved in a train crash and she sees a chance for redemption. So she makes a decision that changes her life. Soon news of what she's done spreads, her life is filled with this new hope, but it also brings her past back to the surface. This stunning, shiny book is Once a Monster by Robert Dinsdale. I just made a video about this book, about how it is a reimagining of the story of the Minotaur, and I actually went on a little tour around London to visit some of the locations in the book, so I'll link to that video below. This is a really clever myth retelling because it transports us to a different, unexpected time and place. So while it is about the Minotaur, who is a character from Greek mythology, it is set in Victorian London, and it imagines what might have happened if the Minotaur had survived through the centuries and was still alive then. And he is discovered by a little girl called Nell, who is part of this street crew of mudlarkers trying to find treasure and sell it to earn their fortune. And the man who runs this group of children for him, and is quite a terrifying man, he realizes that he could exploit the Minotaur and his very strange appearance in order to earn money for himself. And so it kind of flips on its head what you think about whether the Minotaur is the hero or the villain of the story. For something cozy and delightful, The Wonderful World of James Herriot is a charming collection of classic stories by James Herriot, who was a country vet and whose stories have been adapted into the TV show All Creatures Great and Small, which is really lovely, cozy, charming viewing. So this is a collection that features favourite stories from each of the 8 books that James Herriot wrote, and it's also got introductions written by his children, Jim and Rosie. So if you haven't read any of the books yet, this is a great place to start, because you get some of the best stories from each of the books. Stay True by Hua-Su is a memoir that a lot of people in the office have been buzzing about. I really need to read this one next. I think it's gonna make me cry. Capturing a coming-of-age cut short, see, gonna make me cry, and a portrait of a beautiful friendship, Stay True is a deeply moving and intimate memoir about growing up and moving through the world in search of meaning and belonging. This book won the Pulitzer Prize, so it gives you an idea of how amazing it's going to be, and it's about grief and vulnerability and friendship, as well as being about cultural identity. So it's about these two friends who met, and they're from very different backgrounds, but kind of bonded by the fact that American culture doesn't seem to have a place for either of them in it. This one's finally out. This Dark Descent by Kaylin Josephson is a fantasy story. It's based on Jewish folklore. It is a dark page-turning story about horse races and enchanted animals, and I've just finished running a read-along with a bunch of influencers for this book who all adored it. It was one of the most enthusiastic read-alongs I've ever run. So this one went down such a treat, and I know all of them are very excited to talk to all of you about it. So you better pick this one up. This is going to be one lots of people are buzzing about. We're nearly there, 2 books to go. So I've got a big one, Dr. Amir Khan's How Not to Have an Arranged Marriage, which is a gorgeous looking book. Yes, the author is that Dr. Amir Khan. You may have seen him on TV. And this is a novel, it's fiction, but sort of inspired by some of his experiences. This is about a man whose mother wants him to have an arranged marriage. But she doesn't know, because he hasn't told her, that he has already met the woman that he's fallen for, a woman called Jess. And the extra complication is that he also hasn't told Jess that his mother is trying to find him a wife. And then finally, a tiny little book, look how adorable this is, A Book Lover's Guide to the Zodiac by Charlie Castelletti, who is one of my colleagues here and is just brilliant. Books and astrology both help us to understand ourselves and the world around us. So this is an anthology that connects writers and fictional characters to the 12 star signs. So it's got different poems and extracts from classic writers, all guided by Charlie's witty commentary throughout. So let's go and look at Gemini, which is my star sign. So first off in Gemini, we have Jekyll and Hyde. And Charlie says, this is because it's hard to ignore the figure of the twins when it comes to Gemini. Gemini's duality often gets a bad rep. Yes, it does, Charlie, and it's so unfair. And then he goes on to say why actually we're excellent. Thank you. I won't spoil the rest of the contents for fellow Geminis, but I'm very happy with the other choices in there as well. So I think this is an absolutely gorgeous little book. Again, really good Christmas present. It's that time. Write this one down your list. This will be a beautiful one. I'm so excited for Charlie. And that's it, I've made it to the end of the book haul. That was a brilliant haul this month. Let me know in the comments which of those you're most excited to get your hands on. And as always, I will link here to a playlist with all of our previous book haul videos, so you can go back and have a look at some of the other brilliant books that we've published over the last few years since I've been making these videos. And I'll see you next time.